a republic in a sense, a democratic republic, in a sense that we are, we are represented by law. We're governed of the law. So
Right.
there's a chance that the people may be wrong and you're right, even though you made the only one. I think one of our founding fathers in one of the southern states and so forth, one of the southern states refused to sign on to the Constitution because they didn't want to give up they were succeeding economically from the slave trade.
George Mason refused to sign it.
But
you talk about a founding father who knew what he was doing. Mason's one of those guys, every bit as much as Jefferson and Madison.
Right.
And Mason looked at it and said, "I'm not signing that."
Well, one of them finally did sign on, even though the people did not want him to sign on. Okay, because the southern state, I forgot exactly what state it was, but this southern state was doing very well through the slave trade and cotton trade and so forth. And this statesman, even though the majority of his people or if his constituents did not want him to signed on anyway. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Okay?
Well, that's what happens. So when you pay attention to the Constitution, when you obey it, so many of our politicians don't anymore. It makes you wonder if they even read the thing.
Well, and that's a shame. That is a shame. I think that there ought to be a random test of every politician and so forth to make sure that they know the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace. I personally think it's a disgrace.
We may want to update the qualifications.
It was so pronounced when Nancy Pelosi, when it was a reporter that asked her, is this Constitution? And she looked at that person and said, are you joking or something like that?
Yeah.
No, I'm not joking. Is this constitutional? That's a legitimate question.
We were talking earlier about, I ran for office last year, and I had an interview with the Palm Beach Post, which was an adventure unto itself. And one of the things he said was that when you go into office, you have the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Florida, right? The Constitution of the state of Florida comes first because it came first. It's a state constitution, right? The people give up rights to the states. Now the states take some of that authority and give it to the federal government. So that at no point can the federal government have more authority than the state. Right? You can't give what you don't have, right? And the states don't have it, they can't give it, the federal government can't get it. So I said, any bill that comes to the desk, comes before me, I go back to the constitutions and I ask myself, does government have the authority to enact it? Does the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of the state of Florida give me the authority to do this? So how do you find that? You go back to those constitutions, right? Well, if the answer is no, then regardless of what the people want, the answer is no. That's it. I can't do it. I'm not allowed to. Throw it out. If the answer is yes, you go to question 2. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Does this meet the ends, the means for why we have government? Jefferson said, right, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Okay, it's to secure rights. Does this bill help to secure rights?
Right.
If it doesn't, the answer is no. My vote's no. Even if the people are slamming the doors that they want it, the answer's got to be no, because I can't break the law. I can't violate it. And they looked at me like I was crazy. What I'm talking about is obeying the law, and yet the local newspaper looked at me like I was nuts.
Yeah. I think whether it's a local paper or many of these people in elected to office and so forth, we've taken for granted that, hey, we're here in America, the idea worked well, we're prosperous and so forth, so I don't need to really pay much attention to the the founding principles or such, or I don't need to pay close attention to the Constitution, or as a matter of fact, I probably don't even know the Constitution. Why? Because, hey, this is Washington. We do what we feel. It's a big government and such, and
when you look at the economy, right? You look at the jobs. Like I said before, NAFTA jobs are gone. Your jobs are they're in Mexico or they're in China. Everything you buy is either from Mexico or from China, right? Everything's somewhere else. And yet, our politicians, Nancy Pelosi wants this new plane. She got a new plane so she can fly across the country nonstop.
I really think that they need to be collected from.
You know what I'm saying? The problems that
no
really,
disrespect to the speaker, but I think that's abuse.
Yeah. The problems that really hit Americans today don't hit those who are in Congress. If you get to a certain level, a certain financial level, you're above the fray. All right? Whether milk goes up $1 a gallon or not, it's really not going to matter to you. You don't care if it's $10 a gallon or $5 a gallon. You know, you've got $30 million in the bank. You don't care what the cost of a gallon of milk is. But someone who's on minimum wage or less, they care. If milk goes up 25 cents a gallon, they feel it. Because they've got to figure, where am I going to get that extra 25 cents from?
Right.
If it's here on milk, it means it's not here on sugar. It's not there on something else. I can't buy that box of Band-Aids. So the people that get hit the most are the ones who are so far down the lung of the rata. The people making the decisions have no clue, no idea. And that's one of the problems we have with representation in this country here right now. The people that represent us are not part of us. They're not one of us. You have to be a part of that community. You have to be a resident of the state, a resident of the district. You have to be one of the people. But if your constituents are dirt poor and you're making $1 million a year, I don't care if you live on the fringe of that society or not. There's no way you can understand, because you ain't walked a mile in their shoes. You can't represent them. So the decisions you go up there and make are going to be for the people you know and understand, fellow millionaires. That's who you're going to go back. And you're going to, well, let's throw something at these poor people over here because we do need their vote. How can we buy their vote? And that's what politics winds up coming down to. It's a complete insult to our Constitution, to our founding fathers, to all of our generations who came before us, who fought and died to secure our freedom, under the thought that they were securing our freedom. They went to places like Korea and Vietnam. They went to Europe twice because they thought they were securing our freedoms. And what were they actually doing in the end? Hindsight's 20/20, whether you like it or not. It had nothing to do with freedom, and it had everything to do with money, and it wasn't our money. You know, who finances the wars? The banks. Who gets paid on both sides of that war? The banks. Who benefits? The banks. That's where the money comes in. That's where money goes. Right? If you want a war and you want a war and you're going to fight each other, and I'm the bank, I'm going to give you both loans, charge you both interest, and I don't care who wins, have the law last for 40 years, and I'm going to finance you every year, because in the end, I'm making a ton of money on it, and I don't care what happens, either one of you guys.
It's kind of perverse.
And it very much is, and it comes down to poor people. We're down here.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out which one are we going to have represent us? Which millionaire will represent us today? And neither one of them is going to represent us for anything until you find someone who's just as dirt poor as you are.
Yeah.
They got to know your pain.
Why do you think that a lot of people think the Democratic Party in particular is the party that most identifies with the common man, or the man who's struggling, or the poor people, whereas they think Republicans are all about big business and just helping out the wealthy?
It's what it comes down to is where they go for their votes. The Democratic Party goes to the poor people for their votes. We're gonna corner that market.
Why doesn't
we are the party of the poor? Well, 40 years later, the poor are still poor. Okay. So what have you done for me lately? That's it. We're going to be the party of the poor. We're going to represent the people of the poor. If you're in poverty, if you're poor, vote for us, because we're going to give you. That's why you go back to the 1930s, 1940s, the Socialist Party here in the United States. They had this. The president of that party ran for president every presidential cycle, till finally he stopped. The reason he stopped, he said, I don't need to anymore, because the Democratic Party has adopted the socialist agenda. There's no need for a socialist party in America. We have the Democrats now.
The president of the Socialist Party?
President of the Socialist Party. Go back to the 1930s, 1940s, and you'll find at the end of his tenure, he said, we don't need to be here anymore. The Democrats have taken our thing.